All right, so the first type of task that we're going to take a look at in this section is data analysis tasks. Now, the first thing that I want to mention here is that while we're going to be using GPT 3.5, ChatGPT 3. Or ChatGPT 4 rather actually includes built-in functionality for running simple data analysis, right? So it'll actually write code and execute it for performing data analysis, which is pretty cool if you ask me. But since we're going to be focusing on GPT 3.5 in this course, what we're going to be focusing on with data analysis tasks is really using ChatGPT to help you design data analysis projects. So if you have some sort of data that you're trying to analyze effectively, this is going to involve using ChatGPT to give you basic recommendations for how to do that in the best way possible. So like with most things here, when you're doing data analysis tasks, you're really going to want to clearly define the objective. So, if your goal here, and this really starts to kind of bleed over into data science proper, if your goal here is to use, let's say, customer data that your company has collected in order to improve customer retention or customer satisfaction, let's say, you're going to want to be very specific about which metrics you want to maximize and the type of data, the data points that you're working with. So that's the first thing. The second thing would be to, if you have any specific questions or hypotheses about the data, you're going to want to make those clear to ChatGPT. So if you think that... So if you have a theory that customers that buy meat will always or will tend to buy hot sauce, you might want to mention that as a hypothesis. And that's actually something that I've heard is in fact a correlation. But anyway, any specific questions or hypotheses, you're going to want to state those clearly. If you have any desired techniques or approaches to doing data analysis, you're definitely going to want to be specific about those, just to give ChatGPT a good direction to go in. So if you want to perform some sort of regression analysis, or if you want to perform market basket analysis, things like that, you're going to want to be specific about those, especially if you're more experienced in the data science or data analysis field, and you want to point ChatGPT in the right direction. So requesting an explanation, this one is kind of similar to what we discussed when we were talking about critical thinking tasks. If, ChatGPT might give you some ideas or some basic recommendations, but in addition to those, you're usually going to want to have some sort of explanation so that you can know why ChatGPT chose those recommendations. That can usually be very helpful in helping you analyze the effectiveness or the accuracy of those recommendations. And finally, let's just go through a few simple examples. If you want to do some sort of statistical or comparative analysis with data, of course, ChatGPT can help you design those projects and point you in the right direction. And even, if you're using Python to in let's say a Jupyter notebook to run data analysis, ChatGPT can even help you write code for those. That's a separate type of task that we'll talk about in more detail shortly. But that's just another thing that it can help you do, is actually write code that you can then go and run in a Jupyter notebook. So while GPT 3.5 doesn't have the capability to run code for you, you can still have it generate code that you can just copy and paste into, as I said, a Jupyter notebook. If you want to summarize or help interpret data, ChatGPT can help you do that as well. So this can be a really great way to get a basic sense of data and some of the basic characteristics of it. So just something to play around with there. And finally, if you need help, if you need some sort of guidance in how you should clean the data that you're working with, ChatGPT can be pretty good for that. And also, as I already said, in many cases, it can even generate the code for you that you can run in order to make that happen. So whether you're using Python or R or really any other language that's commonly used for data science, ChatGPT can help you do that in many cases. So that's the basics of data analysis tasks. Again, I'm going to give you just some basic examples of prompts that might be that you might see when performing these types of tasks. So let's start off with something that I would consider to be a very a very basic, not very good prompt. What we're going to do is we're going to say something like, what can you tell me from this data set? And in this case, you're of course going to have to copy and paste the data set as part of the prompt. In ChatGPT 4, what you can actually do is upload files, which is a pretty cool feature, and I'll walk you through that in a later section. But in this case, or you might get some basic information about the data set, but in general, ChatGPT is going to just give you some very generic information, right? So it might tell you, the basic ranges of some of the properties that your data set has, but I would imagine that this isn't going to give you very much in terms of actual useful information about your data set. So going up to something that would be slightly better than this, maybe you want to say something like, write me some Jupyter Python code that will tell me the top selling product categories and their average sales figures. And then, of course, you'd want to copy and paste that data set into there, which would provide ChatGPT with some more context, right? So it would know what that data is going to look like. It would know what the different property names are and how to work with them. And in general, it would be able to write you some pretty good Python code that would that you could run in a Jupyter notebook in order to achieve that desired result. So an excellent prompt here would be something like, write me, we'll again use some Jupyter Python code. Let's try that again. In fact, I'm just going to copy this and paste that there. And Jupyter Python code is a little bit of a clumsy phrase there. That's basically just sort of an abbreviated way of saying Python code that can be run in a Jupyter notebook, right? As opposed to Python code that we just write in a Python file and run using the Python command. So we'll say write some Jupyter Python code that will, and then maybe we say something else. Maybe we say perform a comparative analysis. All right, so we're really specifying a desired approach here, or maybe we want to say perform regression analysis on the sales figures for this year, and you would obviously have to provide some data there as well. So this one here is a little bit more complex because it's actually going to be performing a regression analysis, which is a somewhat more complex task than just getting the top selling product categories and their average sales figures, which is why I've listed this as a somewhat better prompt here. It's just it's meant to perform some more complex code or some more complex operations, and it includes this regression analysis specification, which really would point ChatGPT in the right direction. So anyway, this is the basics of performing prompt engineering for data analysis tasks. I'm just going to add that name to the tab here. And those are some of the basic concepts to keep in mind when working with prompt engineering for data analysis tasks.